Everything is in place.
Quorum has been informed.
Your Excellency.
We have a quorum. Quorum has been informed.
Thank you, Chief Whip. We wanted to be sure. Inadvertently gone for the opening ceremony of the tax reform bills. And so we have waited for almost 1 hour for them to finish the opening session. And many have already joined, but to the glory of God, we have now formed a quorum. So we can proceed with the day's proceedings. Yes, the whip of the Senate.
Mr. President, as Chief Whip of the Senate, it is my responsibility, Mr. President, distinguished senators, he who comes to equity must come with clean, seek refuge in these our rules, and in another arm, seek to gracefully breach the rule. That will tantamount to appropriating and reprobating at the same time. So, distinguished senators, I want to specifically quote Order 55, Rule 1. And with the indulgence of the Senate President and my colleagues, I will proceed to read Order 55, Rule 1. At the entry of the presiding officer, all senators, officials, members of the press, and those in the gallery shall stand still until the presiding officer has taken his seat. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I want to report that Senator Natasha has not has been consistently and persistently in breach of this rule, because as the Senate President and the leadership are entering, she doesn't observe that rule by standing off until the President of the Senate is seated after all the prayers. And it was in the media. All the media yesterday reported that when the Senate President is entering, she didn't observe that rule. And today also, she didn't observe that rule. I have to send one of the sergeant at arms to her that her conduct is in breach of this rule. The sergeant at arms is here. She came and reported back to me that she's not going to stand up, still in breach of this rule. Mr. President, distinguished senators, as I said earlier on, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. If you are seeking refuge in one arm, under Order 10 always, seeking refuge under Order 10 of these rules, then you must, for all intent and purposes, observe these rules. You cannot be approbating and reprobating at the same time. So I am urging the indulgence of Senator Natasha to please observe our rules, strictly in compliance, but not in breach. I'm doing that in order to discharge the functions of my office as Chief Whip to ensure that our rules are strictly complied with. And I also crave OCHA to, at her leisure time, study these rules very well so that she will be conversant with the rules of the Senate. If she stands up for the President of the Senate, he is not standing up for the President of the Senate personally, but it is the institution that she is respecting and the office of the Senate President. Tomorrow she will be the Senate President, we don't know. I can be the Senate President tomorrow, inshallah, by the grace of God. And she can be Senate President tomorrow. So it's for the institution. It's not for God's will and Fabio. It's for the institution. So please, Senator Natasha, as my very good friend and colleague, please study these rules very well and then observe, comply with this rule in compliance, not in breach. And thank you very much for agreeing with me by nodding your head. Thank you.
I want to wish them fruitful observation of the proceedings of today. Our distinguished Senator Akintunde lineup, Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari, you laugh as if you don't love women. Meanwhile, you are a member of the Senate Committee of Women Affairs. Let me tell you, the first chairman of the Senate Committee of Women Affairs was a senator from my state. In this chamber in 1999. So it shows you the importance that this nation attaches to women. And he was a mayor. But he was the first chairman of the Senate Committee on Women Affairs. So let me say congratulations to all our women in the nation, including my children, my 4 daughters, my dear wife, and all the wives and spouses of our senators. I want to wish you a fantastic observance of today's events and pray that God will keep you alive to continue to contribute your quota towards global peace. Congratulations to our women. Any petition? Please proceed. Just to ask, is there any legal encumbrance by way of a court case?
None, Your Excellency.
None. So the Senate is free to
Yes, Your Excellency.
delve into it.
Yes, Your Excellency.
Also, accordingly, this petition is referred to the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions to revert to the Senate in 4 weeks.
Nigerian citizen and a constituent of Kogi-central under the name Suberu Azamare Yakubu. And the petition is against the President of the Nigerian Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, for sexual harassment, abuses of office, and malicious obstruction of legislative functions of distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. So with your kind permission, may I please lay this petition? Because as you know, yesterday...
Is there any legal impediment?
On the subject matter, none, sir. None, sir.
Please proceed to lay the petition. Distinguished colleagues, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has a petition from her constituents, and she has also further confirmed before all senators that the matter in issue is not in any court of law. I have no reason not to take her word for it, so accordingly, the petition is referred to the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions to revert to the Senate in 4 weeks.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the report of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition on the alleged incident of disorder caused by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan.
Use your campaign voice.
Mr. President, I think I'm being distracted here, but I can't understand why Senator Natasha Akpoti is accusing me of guilt and therefore unable to speak, and then urging me to speak up.
I think you speak up.
And before then, when she came in this morning, I said hello to her. All she got to tell me was that she knows, she can see how friendly I am to women by doing my work as the chairman of the Ethics Committee. And this distraction, Mr. President, I don't think it's something that is ethical for a senator who is standing on his feet to present a report to be distracted by another senator from presenting his report.
Where is our room? Please sit down. Well, let us look at Rule 55, Sub-Rule 9. 55(9), and if you permit me, I'll read. Am I permitted? Thank you. 55(9) says, when a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. This is a rule. So, distinguished Senator Neda Imaswe, you are protected by the rule. If you have any further thing to add, you can come by way of petition. Your own, we will refer your own to the Committee of the Whole. Because you are the IG of the Senate, we wouldn't give it to you to look into it. So you can always lay your petition. So you are protected. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. of the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions on an incident of alleged disorder caused by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan on Thursday, 20th February 2025, over the reallocation of her seat in the Senate. If it pleases the Senate President and distinguished colleagues, may I proceed to lay this report.
Please proceed. Distinguished Senator Neda Emmanuel, you can give us the synopsis of your report so that other senators can comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions in respect of Order 1B of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, raised by Senator Adaramodu Adeyemi Raphael, Ekiti South, where he drew the attention of the Senate to the incident of Thursday, 20th February 2025, when Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, while protesting reallocation of her seat in the Senate chamber, and felt that the outburst by Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan and the outcry of some sections of the public were uncalled for over the matter, and urged the Senate to be guided by the standing orders in all things. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this matter was referred to this committee for further legislative actions. The committee sat and reviewed. Committee met and resolved that in addressing this matter, it to consider the following instruments: A, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1990 as amended; B, Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended; C, principle of equity, fairness, and justice. And the committee resolved to invite the complainant, distinguished Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu, and the respondent, distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. Testimonies and submissions of the committee listened to oral and received documentary testimonies from the complainant, the eyewitnesses' accounts of those present, and the eyewitnesses of those present at the plenary. Testifying before the committee, distinguished Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu stated as follows: 1, that he is the spokesperson and image maker of the Nigerian Senate. 2, that he was saddened and shocked with the flagrant disregard of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan of the rules of the Senate proceedings as enshrined in Standing Orders of Senate 2023 as amended. 3, that contrary to Section 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Standing Orders of the Senate as amended, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan refused the lawful instructions of the presiding officer to move to her newly assigned seat before raising her order 10 to the Senate, even though the rule states that a senator must speak from his or her assigned seat. That all efforts to get Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to move to her newly assigned seat fell on deaf ears, as Senator Natasha Uduaghan Akpoti continued shouting on top of her voice and pointing her fingers at the presiding officer, insisting on staying on her old seat, thereby disrespecting the Senate and the presiding officers against the rules of the Senate. This action lowered the prestige, integrity, and the esteem of the entire Senate, as her actions were deemed disdainful, disgraceful, and unparliamentary. 4, that as the image maker of the Senate, he received calls both internationally and locally on the issue that it became very cumbersome for him to explain the disdainful conduct of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan of what is happening in the Senate to the various concerned callers. 5, that there was almost a breakdown of law and order in the chamber caused by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who vehemently rejected her new allocated seat in the chamber. 6, Senator Adaramodu further stated that the standing orders of the Senate is a statute that outlines and harmonizes behavior of the senators' conduct of Senate business in the chamber. That it was a daunting task for him to explain the conduct of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan that almost caused a breakdown of law and order in the chamber. 7, that Order 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, stated how a senator shall be allocated or reallocated his seat in the chamber. 8, that the essence of sitting arrangement as captured in standing order is to maintain decorum in the chamber, and it is only the president of the Senate that has the power to allocate or to reallocate seats to senators. 9, that the refusal of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to take her newly allocated seat tantamount to rebellion against the Senate standing order, which regulates the conduct and decorum of senators in the chamber, that the President of the Senate may change the allocation from time to time. And she would be recognized from there before she could speak. But she vehemently refused in the presence of the entire Senate and the Senate presiding officers, visitors in the gallery, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan continued to shout that she was not afraid of the Senate President or anybody. 12, that it was due to the bad image that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan created in the eyes of the public that compelled Senator Adaramodu to move the point of order, calling on the Senate to revisit the incident with the view to instilling discipline in the conduct of Senate affairs. Senator Adaramodu relied on the combined order of Order 1B, 41 and 51 of the Senate standing orders, and his prayers were unanimously adopted by more than 2/3 of the Senate, and his motion was referred to the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petition for further legislative action. 13, that Senator Adaramodu stood by the action he laid on the floor of the Senate in this regard. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, testimony was also received by distinguished Senator Titus Tatenja Zam, the chairman, Rules and Business Committee. In his testimony, Senator Zam stated as follows: 1, that contrary to claims of deliberate suppression, the motion follows standard legislative procedure. 2, that on 7 February 2024, when Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan raised a point of order pursuant to Order 41 and 51, seeking investigation into corruption and inefficiency at Ajaokuta Steel Company and NIAMCO, NIOMCO, she requested immediate presentation of her motion, but due to a scheduled security briefing involving service chiefs, the National Security Advisor, NSA, the Minister of Defense, Police Affairs, and Interior, as well as the Inspector General of Police, the Senate deferred the motion to the next legislative day by the security briefing continuing until 13 February 2024, and the motion was eventually debated and resolved on 27 February of 2024. 3, that the allegation of Senator Natasha Uduaghan that her motion was debated because the Deputy President of the Senate presided that day was not true. That motions appearing in the order paper undergo approval by the Senate President, and her motion had been approved by the Senate President for consideration under Order 41 and 51 on 7 February of 2024. That scheduling of motions, that's 4, that scheduling of motions follows procedural rules and is subject to time constraint during plenary sections. 5, that motions and legislative measures appearing on the other paper are not automatically deliberated upon on the same day, that legislative priorities and time constraints influence the deliberation of motions. 6, that Senator Natasha Akpoti motion was deferred on multiple occasions because it was finally debated because such occurrences are common in parliamentary proceedings and do not reflect bias or attempt to suppress any senator's legislative contributions. 7, that since assuming office as senator for Kogi-central, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has sponsored 3 bills, one of which is at the committee stage, while the other 2 have passed the first reading, and she also moved a motion on the passing of the Ohinoi of Ibera land, Dr. Abdurraham Ado Ibrahim. 8, that the Rules and Business Committee plays a key role in structuring the legislative agenda and assures the public that due process was followed in handling of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's motion. And 9, that the Senate remain committed to transparency, accountability, and fairness in legislative proceedings. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there were other testimonies taken by eyewitnesses on the floor of the Senate of that day, one of which is Mukhtar Usman Dudawa, DDS AA Senate Chamber. Mukhtar Usman Dudawa testifies as follows. 1, that on Wednesday, 19 February 2025, after adjourning of the Senate session, he was informed by the Chief Whip of the Senate, Senator Mohammed Tahi Mongono, that the leadership have directed him to effect some adjustments of seats on the minority side due to movement of 2 senators, namely Senator Onyebuchi, FE, and Senator Ned Nwoko Munir to the majority party. 2, that the Chief Whip reminded him to effect the adjustments in line with the ranking as it has been the tradition of the Senate. 3, that the readjustment affected about 10 senators, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan inclusive, and the reallocation was approved by the Chief Whip, and some chamber staff were instructed to guide the affected senators to their new seats the following sitting day. 4, that all the senators were guided to their new seats, and they complied. But Senator Natasha was shown to her new seat, but she refused and insisted that she would not go anywhere, and removed the name tag on her old seat and sat down and shouting and all efforts by other senators to calm her proved abortive. 5, that Senator Natasha Akpoti was advised by Chief Whip to go to her new seat to enable her speak on the point of order, but she insisted on raising a point of order on her old seat, but was equally advised by the President of the Senate to move to her new seat to be recognized to speak, but she refused and was consequently ruled out of order. That she started shouting in the chamber, which was unparliamentary. All entreaties by some distinguished senators to make her remain calm fell on deaf ears, and she left the chamber on her own when the session was still in progress. The testimonies of Mukhtar Usman Dauda was corroborated by Sandra Davu, Mekawua Abari Kashi, Mercy Rashid Salmanu, and Udeme Igbidejo. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, another testimony was taken from Brigadier General Etido E. Ekbo, who is the Senate Sergeant at Arms. In his written submission, Mr. President, to the committee, Brigadier General Etido E. Ekbo testified as follows. 1, that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, after being sworn in as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, began to display unbridled and uncourt behavior amongst our distinguished colleagues, thereby creating constant conflict and disharmony. That from his investigation, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan had openly engaged in verbal altercation with Senator Godiya Akwashiki and Senator Patrick Ndubeze, in which the President of the Senate and the entire leadership intervened in the interest of peace and harmony. And 3, that by her unethical conduct and verbal attacks, Senator Natasha Uduaghan has succeeded in creating frosty and unfriendly relationship with a number of our colleagues, both in the chamber, committees/meeting rooms, as well as the precincts of the National Assembly. The respondent, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, despite notice to appear, neglected, refused, and opted not to show up at the committee hearing. The observations and findings of the Committee of Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition. After careful examination, the documents available and hearing out the matter, the committee observed as follows. 1, that Senator Natasha Uduaghan has violated Order 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended by vehemently refusing to relocate to her newly assigned allocated seat in the Senate chamber and insisting to raise the point of order from a seat not allocated to her, thereby causing commotion and disruption in the Senate proceedings, violating Order 62, subsection 2 of the Senate Standing Orders by refusing to leave the chamber when ordered to do so by the presiding officer. 2, that her behavior on the 20th of February 2025 was unethical and unbecoming of the Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by refusing to uphold the moral sanctity of the Senate and of the hallowed chamber. 3, that her refusal to appear before the committee to explain herself despite being served with the notice of the hearing published in the Senate order paper and read out to the Senate, indicating time and place of the committee meeting was disdain and disrespectful to the committee and the Senate as a whole. 4, that her allegations that the President of the Senate is frustrating her legislative functions by not allowing her motions and bills to be considered in the chamber is frivolous because the President of the Senate approved her motion on the investigation of alleged corruption and inefficiency at the Jakarta Steel Company Limited, a national iron mining company, for consideration, and it was considered accordingly. And equally, she had sponsored 3 bills that are various stages of legislative processes. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, distinguished Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan came with a petition that was referred to the committee on the 5th of March 2025, accusing the Senate President of sexual harassment. And on this petition that was referred to this committee, the committee observed as follows. 1, that based on Order 40, subsection 4 of the Senate Standing Order of 2023, as amended, which states clearly that no senator may present to the Senate a petition signed by him or herself. The petition submitted by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan ran contrary to this order, as she signed her own petition. 2, that under Order 40, subsection 7 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, which states that Senate should not receive or deliberate on any matter to which actions are pending in any court of law, the petition of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan being a matter before a law court of competent jurisdiction, the committee therefore cannot deliberate on the petition. 3, the committee noted that distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan went to court to seek an interim order preventing the Senate and its committee from exercising this constitutional duties as enshrined in Section 88, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, the committee felt duty-bound to exercise its constitutional functions. It is noted that legislative investigation is part of lawmaking. It is adjunct of the legislative process. Accordingly, any investigation carried in the exercise of those powers are constitutional and competent. 4, it is interesting to note that while on one hand, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan sought in breach to restrain the Senate from doing its constitutional duties under Section 88, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, she also brought a petition to the Senate, arguing that her petition on sexual harassment has merit, which must be accepted and acted upon by the Senate. Accordingly, the petition was referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petition for action. The distinguished senator cannot, on one hand, seek to prevent the Senate from doing its duties on a petition based on a motion brought against her, and on the other hand, insist that her petition on sexual harassment to the Senate be acted upon through the Ethics Committee. He who comes to equity, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, must come with clean hands. It is important to note that the motion of Senator Adaramodu seeking investigation on the conduct of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan was referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions when there was no case pending in court on the issue of seat allocation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition, having due deliberation of the matter as revealed by Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu, Senator Titus Tatenja Zam, Chamber staff, and the Sergeant at Arms, the committee recommends as follows. 1, that the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan for 6 months for her total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Senate in general to public opprobrium. 2, that for the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or to reduce the tenure of suspension, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan shall submit a written apology to the Senate before the reconsideration by the Senate. 3, that the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan with effect from 6 March 2025 from all legislative activities forthwith. 4, that her office be locked up for the duration of her suspension and hand over all Senate properties in her possession to the clerk of the National Assembly. 5, that for the duration of her suspension, she cannot come or be seen within the vicinity of the National Assembly, including her staff. 6, that her salaries and allowances, including those of her legislative aides, be suspended and withdraw of all security details for the duration of her suspension. And 7, that for the period of her suspension, she be barred from representing herself to the public, locally and internationally, as a Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In conclusion, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my most distinguished and respected colleagues, on behalf of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions, we appreciate the Senate President and our distinguished colleagues for the opportunity granted us to serve Nigerians through the Committee of Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions, respectfully submitted for consideration and approval. Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues.
Distinguished Senator Jimo Ibrahim.
Of this, let me first of all thank the chairman of the Ethics Committee for a job well done, because the narrative are well presented and they go through our rules one after the other. And I must thank you for an excellent job of remembrance of what happened, unfortunately, incident that happened in these chambers. As Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan used to say, the Senate is an institution. And it just goes above any person here. There's any president. The institution must be protected for the survival of democracy. And if we are senators, we cannot make rules for ourselves and obey those rules, then we have issues with the general public. When we make little laws, we should obey them if we want Nigerians to also obey the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And so on these notes, I believe and I strongly feel that we must obey our laws. We did say here, constitutionally, Section 1, Section 2 of the Nigerian Constitution says, if any act of parliament that contradicts the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to the extent of its inconsistency is void and of no effect. Attorney General of Benin State and Attorney General of the Federation. Applying that to the Senate, distinguished Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we made our red books into rules. Any behavior, any praxis of any senator, no matter how highly placed, that is inconsistent with the provision of the rules associately put in place by the Ethics Committee in this paper, Mr. Senate President, that behavior of church senator is to the extent of its consistency a violation of the rules. And unfortunately, Mr. Senate President, you as a liberalist, there is nothing you can do about it. I refer again before I end my submission. I quote from the chamber, the Senate leader, Distinguished Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, that the Senate is an institution. Let me say clearly, if any of us violates the rules, the executive is not going to come here to discipline senators. And should the executive violate their own rules here, the Senate cannot go to the executive and discipline ministers. Again, should the judiciary violate their own laws, they have Nigeria Judicial Commission or AJC that discipline judges. Every institution that is sacrosanct to democratic process of Nigeria have its own abiding rules and regulations. And let me say clearly that this paper also alluded to the facts that we should be cautious of the facts that the Constitution gives us our own right to regulate ourselves. It's in obedience of this regulation of our own rules that our integrity, which should be number one in the dashboard of our existence, should be upheld. And I want to appeal to my colleagues that our integrity supersedes whatever we have in life. What a man compromises integrity, what he doesn't have integrity, is left with nothing. In fact, the best is to commit suicide and die. If you don't have name, you don't have honor, what are you doing in this world? So it's on this note, I appreciate you, Mr. President, being a liberalist. You want cooperation, you want collaboration, but the distillment of our rules to the hearing of every senator is very key. And should you go to your liberalism and begin to do cooperation and collaboration in these chambers, then there will be complete breakdown of orders. And of course, in a society where there are no rules and orders, I think it's an animalistic society. You are the hegemon here by law, and you have to obey the rules and regulations and ensure there is compliance. And I want to thank the leadership of the Senate for standing, in full force of the fact that the Senate is an institution. Based on these submissions, I'm in intendium with all that is said in this paper. And there is even a provision here that if you apologize, you can just come back to the Senate even tomorrow. You just have to do a written apology. So what you can see, justice being mitigated with liberalism, simplicity again. So the rule didn't even provide for apology. But again, the magnanimous nature of the committee, they said if you just write a written apology, not to the minister, not to the Senate President, but to the Senate as an institution, tomorrow morning you have your rights restored. I so support that we abide completely with the content of this paper minus nothing. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
So what I want to say is merely reinforcing the report of the committee as well as the submissions made by the immediate past speaker. Mr. President, as I earlier alluded to, it is by virtue of Section 60 of the 1999 Constitution that gave us the power to regulate ourselves that we gave these rules to ourselves in order to regulate our proceedings. It is only in kingdom of animals there are no regulations to guide behavior. But as an institution, pursuant to Section 60, we gave these rules in order to guide our proceedings and insulate the Senate from a scenario whereby there will be an invitation to chaos and anarchy as a result of absence of rules and regulations guiding our procedure. Again, as I said earlier on, and clearly also stated in the report, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. You cannot, at one end, seek to take refuge under certain provisions of the rules, and in another arm, seek to violate it. That will tantamount to appropriating and reprobating, or picking and choose, which is frowned at by our courts. So, Mr. President, distinguished senators, this institution would outlive all of us by the grace of God. So long as there is democracy, this institution is the replica of the representative will of the Nigerian people. And as such, we should always be seen to be manifest, not only protecting, jealously guarding and protecting our rules, but should be seen manifestly to be guiding and protecting our rules. And I also urge my colleagues, distinguished senators, to always at their leisure time study our rules very well so that their conduct and behavior will always be in consonance with the provisions of our rules, because equity aids the vigilant but not the indolent. So, Mr. President, distinguished senators, on that note, I fully associate myself with all the submissions of the committee, and I adopt same as mine. Thank you.
Nigerian Senate, distinguished colleagues, my name is Asuko Ekpeyong, Senator representing Cross River South. I rise to adopt and to state that the report, as read, a true and fair view and representation of what occurred here in these chambers on the 20th of February 2025. Distinguished colleagues, I was present, as were many of you, on the 20th of February when this issue arose. I watched from my vantage position here, the screaming, the shouting, the speaking, even without recognition, in front of an audience. Young school children sat up there from the gallery watching this display. Distinguished colleagues, this Senate chambers is a citadel of democracy. In these chambers hearing represents 109 men and women who are a representation of the different ethnic groups, the different tribes, religions, and faiths of this country. It is expected that there will be differences of opinions. But this Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended is a Bible or Quran, if you will, a guide, a North Star for this Senate, such that there will be structured debate there will be dialogue, and we will come to consensus building. And the majority will have their opinion heard, such that we can move this nation forward. Without these rules, without these guides, like the Chief Whip said, we may remain as animals. Every association, every institution has its rules. We cannot pick which one we will defend, or which one we will choose to adopt, or which one we will choose to follow, and ignore the others. What occurred here was a flagrant disregard, or maybe a misunderstanding of these rules. Your Excellency, these rules assures that this Senate is stronger as a whole than the sum total of our parts. I stand by the prayers that this committee's report states, and I say that please, there's little or no need to continue to debate this. Let us get into the action of the day. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
I want to confess my sin today, because this is holy month of Ramadan, and at the same time of fasting. I'm one of those that put you in this problem, and I'm very sorry. When my sister came to the Senate, you were very reluctant, giving her a leadership position. I want to recall your word. You said she's a rookie. And there are people that came before her. Karimi, why will I give her chairmanship position? You said you wouldn't do that. That your conscience will not allow you to do that. I went to some leaders here to put pressure on you. Then finally, me and Senator Jubri came to you that position that Senator Ohere left is for Kogi State. It's not. And that you must give it back to Kogi State. I even went to old meeting with the husband to strategize on how she will be given that chairmanship of local content. And finally, you succumb. I'm very sorry, sir. When we gave seats here, the seat I allocated to her was where Senator Orwell is sitting. It caused problem here. Senator said she came, she was the last person that came. Why would she sit in front of them? You had to leave the leaders here and corrected me.
Speaking to the microphone.
You led the leadership after sitting one day that Karimi, what are you doing? You want to divide this place because you want to favor your sister? That is not right. You have to reallocate the seat. In fact, when you still reallocated the seat, I still put out that edge. Why? Just to, at least, make my sister comfortable here. Senate President, I want to recall what happened that day before the leadership came in. She was very unhappy. She shouted my name to the high heavens, abused me, abused my mother. For what? For simple
Abused
change.
your mother?
Sir?
Was your mother around?
Mr. President, it's very important you listen to me, my colleagues. Mr. President, my colleagues, I'm a Christian, and I know in the book of Matthew chapter 5 verse 9, the Bible says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Because of that, I did a private chat to her. I want to read it. Yes, for this purpose. Madam, why not take a path of peace Apologize to the leadership and your colleagues and move on. One that seems your enemy today can still be your friend tomorrow. It is not even healthy to keep warning always. My sincere advice. I hope you are not offended. I also followed up. If at all you need my support in carrying out my suggestion, you can have my back. The Spirit of God is leading me to doing this. Please note that I have not discussed this with anyone. Do not interpret this to be anyone sending me to you. Your husband is our friend that we enjoy a valued relationship with, and I owe him a lot to have decided on this move. God guide you aright. He who fights and run away may live to fight another day. Those advising you to keep fighting, most of them doesn't know what it takes to win an election to the Senate. You know your labor, the pain, the struggle to get where you are. You need a good relationship with your colleagues to get the best for your people. A little here, a little there, bending to people's opinion. A good politician will do all possible to move on. Note that we have not spoken for 6 months. So I'll change my mind and do what I'm doing tonight. It's the grace of God in me. This text was sent on 24th February 2025. She received it because I know some people also told me a reaction to this text, even in Singapore, where they were. Mr. President, just like Moses told God, the Lord told Moses at the Mount of Horeb, you have stayed in this mountain for too long. We have stayed in this mountain for too long. Let us take Nigeria to the promised land. There are works to do for our people. We are not sent here because of all these intrigues and all this rubbish. We are sent here to work for our people. Let the decision of the committee, let it stand. Thank you.
For this opportunity that you have given to me to make a few remarks about what is on the table before all of us. Distinguished colleagues, I know how senators are have been feeling about the subject of discussion today. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am sure that all of us are very well aware of the efforts that were made to avoid today. And so I want to say, on behalf of myself and my colleagues on this side of the aisle, that we feel very sad that this thing is coming from this side. I would have loved that it is coming from this side. Mr. President, I want to say without any fear of contradiction that it is very, very unfortunate that it has come this way. Like I said, all efforts were made to avoid what is happening today. We are members of the minority on this side. But we are also senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And we have our rules. And as chronologically put together here, there is no doubt that there has been a breach of our rules. And breaches of rules and laws definitely come with consequences. These are the consequences that have been put very clearly here that ordinarily would have been avoided. Mr. President, we are not against the report. But Mr. President, I want to remind all of us that we are all Nigerians. And as Nigerians, we have the tradition encapsulated in the sage that if you beat your child with the right hand, you draw that child with the left hand. We therefore say that this Senate is aware that even in our homes, we have very recalcitrant children. We don't drive these children away from the house. So we keep begging them to be of good behavior. Sometimes we beat them too. And so today we are faced with this situation that we all know impinges on the integrity of this institution, that is ordinarily the highest lawmaking institution in Nigeria. And so the expectation of many Nigerians is that we must demonstrate the highest level of integrity. And it starts with obeying our rules. Having said that, Mr. President, from this side of the aisle, we want to plead that while implementing these recommendations that will be approved by the Senate, or is most likely to be approved by the Senate, if it is convenient for the Senate and Mr. President, now that even the committee has given a window of possible mitigation of this sentence, we want to ask if it is convenient for the Senate and Mr. President that the 6 months punishment for suspension be reduced to 3 months. I say this with all with all sense of responsibility, but I think that with what has been canvassed here and the unanimity of senators on the gravity of these incidents, on the integrity of this institution, that 3 months is sufficient for some level of restitution, that 3 months will be enough for our sister and us here to reflect, to circumspect, and agree with the generality of opinion here. One person or 2 persons, or even a group of persons cannot be bigger than the generality of the Senate here. And even as we rose from our meeting yesterday, to avoid this moment, we had raised the subcommittee to interface with the relevant persons in this impasse. Unfortunately, we have not been able to actualize our desires until today. And so, Mr. President, on behalf of myself and my colleagues here, we just pray that this type of ugly circumstance will not rear its head again. And going forward, having admitted that we are one family in this Senate before, that we will continue to remain the one family that we have adopted for ourselves in the past, believing that Nigerians are looking up to us for laws and checks that will bring succor to the ordinary Nigerian. I think that, as unfortunate as it is, this distraction is avoidable. And after today, Mr. President, I hope very sincerely that all of us will put hands together to ensure that we abide by the rules of the Senate, that we conform ourselves and focus ourselves very, very sensibly on the reasons why we are here, to make laws for this country, to attract benefits to our constituencies, and ensure that Nigerians benefit from good governance. Mr. President, I thank you for this opportunity.
Nobody would have raised his hand, but I can see Father, the Disciplinary Senator, Father Honsis, is still raising his hand. Maybe you left out something he wants to add. The Disciplinary Senator, Father Honsis.
My name is Senator Father Honsis from Osun East. My own is just bold talk as an elderly person. It seems as if we don't know where we are and who we are. Today you are number 3 in this country, which means all of us are that number 3. It's a serious upper layer of the whole nation, 109 out of 250 million people. So it carries what we call integrity. And for the past 2 weeks, the integrity has gone down just because of mere trivial matter of allocating seats and so on. We don't want to know what is undercurrent. God so kind, those people who push you to assist, they have confessed. And I have prayed for him that may God forgive him and Jubril for pushing you to have mercy on who. God even said, I will have mercy on who I will have mercy on. Not everybody. And it has even taught you a lesson. You have to look at the whole issue critically before you even act. Today, everywhere, including Berekete Radio, calling number 3 to come and explain things. Just a radio that we licensed. It's an insult. My own now is how to bring this integrity back. Once a damage is done, to bring it back is a long story. All of us must have to work hard. Within this period, we have to bring it back. As per the punishments attached, if I saw one of our leaders today sweating before channel, I said, issue of what? There's no other paper that. My own is that, how do we bring the integrity back? Because we are in a serious situation of tax law, where we are going to make tax law to benefit common people. How do they believe us? Fighting on seat. No. Mr. Senate President and the leadership, we have to call a spade a spade. We have a Bible here, and this is the first one to be given to us, followed by Nigerian Constitution. And we have a lot of lawyers here. Please, let us do our work seriously. And after that, we can be friends. It has shown you now that there is no friend. You don't have any friend, though. So, today, tomorrow, we don't know what will happen. The only friend to you is your wife and your children and God. We are praying for you, you will succeed, but let us face what we are here for. And that's my own. As regards the punishment, well, if it is the 6 months we are talking, if you are going to have mercy 3 months as prescribed by our minority leader, how well and good a punishment is a punishment. Today, we don't even know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe the whole Federal High Court in Lagos and Abuja will be bombarded again. Let us do our work. Thank you very much.
Let me, You had hinted me on your suggestion, and may I plead that when we go to prayers, you raise it. Let me just hear from at least 2 more people, and then I'll call the leader of the Senate to end it.
Important for us to look at it with all sense of responsibility, because this institution is an institution that must be respected and appreciated in terms of making law and in terms of following due process. And if you look at the public discourse on this very important issue, and if you look at the type of stereotype of form of perception and the negative and the unfortunate situation this distinguished Senator Natasha, after all the appeal made by her prominent senators from her state, she continued to go to the court and continued to go to the public instead of to refer to the Committee on Ethics and Privilege. I think if we are not enforcing our constitutional responsibilities, I urge this Senate to expunge the second recommendation for that the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or reducing the tenure of suspension of Senator Natasha shall, if she submit a written apology to the Senate before the reconsideration by the Senate, because she has the leverage to do what is needful as a matured and responsible woman. But despite that appeal by my neighbor, she went and destroyed the names of prominent leaders of this institution. So I'm against the lifting of any or reducing any suspension less than 6 months, which was recommended by the committee. And at the same time, if we are not imposing our laws into those that breach the law, so that means our coming here is meaningless, because if you look at all of us here, we have the mandate of Nigerians, and we go through vigorous campaign to come here, and all the burdens of Nigerians are under us. We are under serious pressure, and all of us, if you look at us, we are under serious stress and under serious pressure by different people on this very important matter. So as a matter of fact, if you look at the 10th Assembly, how many people died because of the pressure of the people. And this negative and stereotype form of perception, which was created by disgruntled elements, because of their selfish and myopic thinking, will allow them to be continued to come into this red chamber. Mr. President, and respected colleagues, with due respect and sense of humility, generosity is being encouraged in all religions, whether Islam or Christianity. But law must be enforced on anybody. That is why Nigeria, we are having a lot of problems. If we are not enforcing law on lawmakers that break the law, by creating stereotype and negative perception against all of us. That means we are nowhere to be found independently. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, prominent state and prominent individuals that are here, all of them are under serious discourse. I saw His Excellency, the former governor of Abia State, in Arise. I saw him in channels defending this institution, this sanctity of this institution. We cannot allow ourselves to be put under serious stress. We have a lot of things. Under this assembly, we are trying to solve most of the existing problems we have inherited since independence, because we are trying to put things in a very perspective manner. So, Mr. President and my respected colleagues, I'm against lifting this, but we have done it in 7th Assembly when House of Reps member from Kano State, Abdul Munmin Jibrin, went against the institution, but we refused to lift it. That is why he became under a serious control and respect for the institution. And all Nigerians, all eyes are on us, because if we allow this thing, that after abusing you, Mr. President, after holding all the positions in this country, you are deserved to be respected as a father and putting your family under serious stress. So, Mr. President, my respected colleagues, even if there is any allegations, you need to put head as you have helped this woman, you have helped her to be in a position. So I think it is unhealthy. We should allow ourselves to be misused by appealing from the minority leader to make this institution bastardized. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Oshimole, you notice that we will not finish. I even have something to say, but I won't say. Senator Father Honsi pointed out that I have no friend any longer, that I only have my wife, my children to contend with. Because even the senator we are discussing is the wife of my very close friend and brother. So I thought. On the day of our marriage, I slept in Kogi, in her house, 2021 or 22. The next day, I ran to Ubajana Airport. I missed my flight because the plane could not land since there had no light. So I ended up sleeping at Dangote Cement Factory with 9 people. So I spent 3 days. Please, give me a chance to say something. Even when Senator Webwe attempted to say that he was present in the same car, the social media said he was lying. But you see, we have been taken to the floor. We have been dragged to the floor. I have a responsibility. If you look at the rules of the Senate, I don't only interpret the rule, but the rule, which is an extension of the Nigerian Constitution, gives me the power under Section 20, subsection I and H, no, H and I, that the Senate President shall be responsible for the observance of the rules of debates. It shall give rulings on points of order or of constitution raised during debates. Above all, he is the only person to interpret the rules, these rules that have been made. That's why I'm sitting here. I'm in the best position to interpret the rules of the Senate because I have the constitutional power enshrined in these outstanding orders. I don't want you to be bothered by sponsored and generated blackmail, but let us see how we can come back together, make peace, and work together. It's for a while. We have, in this 10th Senate, barely less than 2 years to go. And we'll go our different ways. No matter what we came in here with, whether we are poor, whether we are rich, we should respect one another. So, Senator Karibi, on behalf of the 10th Senate, I must apologize to your wife and your mother particularly for the abuses one of us rained on her. Totally unmerited. I only made a joke when I said, was she in the Senate? I know she wasn't here when those abuses were being rained on her. We should respect one another. Senator Cyril, if you have, or maybe Senator, should it be, do you have anything to add? After that, we just take a word of advice from elder statesman.
Mr. President, distinguished, and I put myself in your shoes, that if I was the one, what would my family say? Only God knows what the international visitors will have as their opinion. Mr. President, I want to first of all support the position of Senator Dandusi that recommendation 2 should not be included in these prayers. You don't give an avenue to somebody who is recalcitrant. You can only give avenue for somebody who is willing. If somebody is willing, even today, what we saw this morning about another petition on the same issue should not have come up. Mr. President, it is always a pleasure when I come into this chamber and I see people like Senator Oji Uzo-Kalu, a 1999 governor, Senator Goje, 1999 senator, 1999 minister and 2-term governor. I always feel very happy shaking hands with the likes of Senator Lawal. And I put myself as being a very lucky person if I stand and I shake hands with even the distinguished Senate President. I know where I was in 2007 when you became a governor in this state, in this country. And I know it is not for mere guys, mere people that can become governor in your state. In terms of age, Mr. Senate President, I felt so bad that on that fateful day, Senator Natasha can speak to you the way and manner. Senator Natasha cannot be my sister, my junior sister, because I'm 15 years older than her, and my mother does not have anybody that is 45 in age. For her to point at you and speak the way she spoke to a number 3 man in this country is an affront. In my village, nobody will accept that. So for anybody to now put this option number 2, that if somebody, it is not supposed to be, it is supposed to come from her willingly, I want to apologize. That's a different thing entirely. Mr. Senate President, when we get to prayers, we are going to vote on all these prayers. For me, I want to also end this by coming to you, Mr. Senate President, even if you are not there. I want to lead you to the book of Isaiah 54, verse 17. The book of Isaiah 54, verse 17. And it says, and I say to you, Mr. Senate President, that no weapon fashioned against you shall prosper. Senator Akpabio, no weapon fashioned against you shall prosper. And every tongue every tongue, Senator Akpabio, that rise up against you in judgment shall be condemned. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and the vindication from me, says the Lord. Sorry, my Muslim brothers, that I don't have a Quran. Mr. Senate President, you're a nice man. You're a good man. Senator Ereti Kingibe said something that Senator Natasha benefited greatly from you, very greatly. And Senator Fedansi just said something. You don't have friends. Because if Senator Natasha and the husband can do what they have done to you, then who are your true friends? When this issue happened, I asked Senator Natasha, is there a problem between the SP and your husband? She denied. And I was wondering, when the senator came here, we extended a lot of courtesies to her and the husband. Several occasions that we have attended, Mr. Senate President, we create seats for the husband in the midst of senators when he is not one. That shows we respect your friend. And most times when I see you, I always see you in the same car with the husband. If a friend can treat you this way, can an enemy treat you better or worse than that? Mr. Senate President, you are a kind man. You are a kind man. You are a kind man. And I pray that your kindness will speak for you always. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. And this
discussion, let me say that I really don't have much to say, because as it is said in law, res ipsa loquitur. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, when a lawyer in court says res ipsa loquitur, all he's trying to say is that let us not spend too much or waste so much of the court's precious time. Let us rest this case, because the facts speak for themselves. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I join in commending the work of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition. It's a very detailed report. And I thank the committee for also bringing all the people who gave testimonies. On my part, let me just say this. First, to the Nigerian women. Today being the International Day.
Order, please.
Today being International Women's Day, being commemorated all over the world. Also being commemorated in this Senate, because there's an ongoing program that we also join from here. This is not about gender. This is about one fact, that while we struggle as a Senate and as a people to continue to influence laws that will ensure to create more space for our women in public institutions, those of our women who have found themselves in public institutions out of this time should learn, understand, and obey the rules and regulations of those institutions, so that they also will be good ambassadors of the Nigerian women. Let me also say that beyond gender, this is not also about North or South. It's not about where you come from. As a matter of fact, all our senators from Kogi are fully opposed to what has happened. And that's why they are all in support of what we are doing. It's also not about political party. Let me also say that what we are doing cuts across different political parties. It's about a sense of indignation to a deliberate refusal to respect the rules and regulations of the Senate as an institution. Mr. President, people will be governor for 8 years as chief executive. They will be honorable minister. They will still go back to the nooks and crannies of their constituencies, go around every village to go and contest election to come to this Senate. It is because there is something about this Senate as an institution. It is also because it is a Senate of rules and regulations. So, this is not about one political party trying to witch hunt another. As a matter of fact, let me emphasize for the record, and for those bloggers who like to sit in judgment over what we do here, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition is a bona fide member of the Nigerian Labour Party. He's not APC. The minority leader, who spoke very well as a minority leader, trying to also make a case, did not say he was opposed to this, because he was one of those who played a major role in trying to curtail this whole situation from degenerating in the first instance. All he had to just say was to make a plea of mitigation from 6 months to 3 months. But he's not opposed to what we are doing. He's of the People's Democratic Party and a ranking senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But he's guided by conscience and a sense of indignation to, like I said, a deliberate, refusal to obey rules and regulations of an institution. May I also emphasize that this is also not about gender. I said it before. Most single Senator Ireti Kingibe, God bless her, she's busy at the International Women's Day program with your permission, and we are going to join them there. She has different programs to attend today as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Women Affairs. The single Senator, Mrs. Ireti Kingibe, signed this report as a member of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petitions. Her name is number 21, and her signature is there, fully in support of these regulations. Senator Ireti Kingibe is not a member of APC. Senator Ireti Kingibe is not a man. She's a woman. And by the grace of God and the privilege extended by this Senate, she's the chairman of the Senate Committee on Women Affairs. So this is not about where you come from. It's not about your political party. It's not about your gender. It is about this institution that is called the Senate and the need for each and every one of us who is privileged to be here, because it's only a privilege. Nothing suggests that we are the best in our various constituencies. It is a privilege, and we are here by public trust of our constituents who voted for us. So, it is a collective desire of this institution called the Senate that we will restore law and order. And I also want to remind all of us and the public that all those who are served in the Senate or in the House of Representatives and who felt that their achievement should be measured by the number or the volume of content they created on the social media, who felt their achievement should be measured by the number of followers they had on social media, all those who felt grandstanding should be the order of the day. I'm sure you can begin to name them in both houses. Where are they today? Who is talking about them today? What is their relevance in the polity of this nation? Let this lesson be learned by everybody. And let everyone understand that when we are here, this is a hallowed chamber. I listened to Distinguished Senator Natasha on Arise News. And I'm saying to all my distinguished colleagues, I had no regrets about what she said about me. She said I called her at exactly 13 minutes past 12. I had no regrets. And every one of you know it is characteristic of my own personal leadership role to try to reconcile everybody. I went to the Senate President and I got there that night. And I said, sir, tomorrow in chamber, you will have to tender a public apology to distinguished Senator Natasha. I beg you in the name of God. Because her understanding of what you said is different from the way you are interpreting it, by saying she should not speak as if she was in a nightclub. And Mr. President, you explained again that what you meant was it's only in the nightclub that everybody speaks in loud voice, trying to raise their voice above the volume of the music. And I said, sir, I understand you. But tomorrow you need to explain that again to her and other Nigerian women and apologize to her. And you asked me a question, why is it that you are always coming to me to talk? You have not have you called Senator Natasha? Everybody is dragging me on the social media, her bloggers, including herself, saying I must go down. Have you called her? And I picked my call and called Senator Natasha, placing her on speakerphone. DSP was there, and two other of our colleagues. And I called. I didn't think 12 midnight was any time that we would not still be awake as senators. We go to bed 2 a.m., 3 a.m. People who are dragging us on social media should know that. And when I called distinguished Senator Natasha, the first thing I said was, distinguished, I am sorry. I hope I did not wake you up. She said, no, sir. I'm still busy. I'm still at work. You know, I can't be sleeping by this time. And I said, how is my brother? Referring to her husband. She said, he's fine and he's right here. And I said, I only called you to ask you a question. She said, what? I said, my dear sister, what would you gain? Because I'm reading everything your people are saying on social media. But what will you gain if the Senate President goes down? What do you stand to benefit? That was all the discussion. And as she was talking, she said, well, I didn't start this fight. As she was talking, my phone started saying reconnecting, meaning that network was failing. I cut it off and called back. As soon as she came back, Mr. President, you took over the discussion, believing that you were talking to a friend's wife who just said the husband was by her. And you said, Princess of the Senate, why are your people dragging me? And we discussed all of this. And at the end of the discussion, you spoke with the husband and reminded the husband or told the husband about a pending nomination that he was supposed to make for Delta State. And I thought that was the height of it, Mr. President. We were nominating people who will serve in the Public Complaints Commission. The husband is not the governor of Delta. He's not a senator from Delta. And I felt it was the height of respect that you could have for anybody, that you will ask the husband to submit the name of the nominee for Delta State for a 5-year tenure in public service. That was how we rounded up that discussion. But I listened to distinguished Senator Natasha on Arise. We rounded up that discussion. You came here the following day, you apologized, that rested the matter. But she recalled the matter last week on Arise and simply said, I called her at 13 minutes past 12, middle of the night, to threaten her. And I said, if SP must go down, you too must go down. I never said so. And I call on the DG, DSS, and all those, security agencies who have unrestricted access to telecommunication networks to please recall the record of the discussion that I held with distinguished Senator Natasha on my phone. So, and for me, if somebody says something that I know to be a blatant lie, it will be difficult for me to believe any other thing you say. So that's why when she proceeded later to say I was sexually harassed, Senate President took me around his house where his wife lives, where his children live, and was holding my hand with my husband following. And he told me, do you like this sitting room? If you like it, I'll bring you by there so that we can enjoy ourselves. There was no way I would believe all of that because...
So what year?
Yes.
What year?
What year? Did the discussion...
No, what year did she allege?
Sorry?
What year?
He said 2023. 2023.
What year are we?
This is 2025. Well, sir, I clarified all I needed to clarify. I just wanted to say that, and Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I had said all of those things just for me to make this simple point. Just for me to make this simple point. This is the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are expected to be sober. We are expected to carry ourselves in a way that we will continue to reflect the importance and the sanctity of this chamber. And having said all of this, what I would just say to our colleagues is that I am totally in support of the recommendations by the committee, and I commend them for the good work they have done. And if in the wisdom of this committee, or of this Senate, it is upheld that most distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan be so suspended, then my advice and appeal to her will be that she spends her period of suspension to read and learn our rules very well, so that when she comes back to the Senate, she would have come back as someone who understands this rule back to back. I thank you, Mr. President, and I thank all our colleagues.
Ordinarily, I would not have continued, but the distinguished Senator Adam Oshimole has been raising his hand, so let's... I don't know.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I know people are tired. I do not intend to speak long. I just thought that having listened, first, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, of the report of the Ethics Committee chaired by Senator Neda, and of other contributions that have been made, including the very, very insightful summary by the Senate leader, I thought, because you have encouraged us, sir, regardless of what my dad said, that you have no friend, I think you have friends. It would be dangerous for you to lead yourself to the conclusion that you don't have friends. How can you preside over affairs of enemies or people you don't trust? That trust line between the leadership and the followership must be serviced. But it can be brought under test in moments like this. My advice is that the quality of a leader is tested when you are under severe provocation, how you manage it, which is why I appreciate the way you have even admitted to more complaints as if nothing had gone wrong. Sometimes in leadership we face those temptations. I thought I should share with my very good friend and sister, and also our in-law, my experience on the floor of this Senate. I went on China television, in my opinion, to defend the Senate. When we were being accused of spending money here and there, I said, no, I bought my own furniture, etc. A distinguished senator said I had breached his privileges. On that occasion, even some people spoke in my favor. But there were few who insisted that what I said was in bad taste. I asked myself there and then, who will cast the first stone that he has never lied? Sorry, he has never erred, if I have actually erred. But on this occasion, my intention was to defend the institution. And yet, some members felt offended. I have been a governor for 8 years. I was re-elected. I didn't do a receipt. I chairman the governing party for 2 years. I was removed. I didn't go to court. So once I noticed that there were some senators who felt that my comment was embarrassing to them, for me, it is a mark of strength to admit that that not be my intention, that I apologize to those who felt offended by my comment, even as my intention was very noble and clear as far as I was concerned. I think that to apologize is not to belittle yourself. And even the Holy Bible says, and this is where I want to appeal to those who have taken very strong stand, that any sin we commit, once we admit to the fact of our failing, of committing, of breaching any of the 10 commandments of God, that if we apologize to God and confess that we will not do so again, we can still see the kingdom of God. I think it is based on this logic that the committee created a window. And I also know that on the previous occasion, that sort of window, even though not stated, was exploited for a former chief whip. So I don't want to go into the merits because there is nothing new to be said. I just want to appeal to distinguished Senator Mrs. Uduaghan that everyone that has spoken cannot possibly be coward or foolish. Truth of the matter is the rules are binding. They are enforceable. They are potent. I wasn't in the Senate that day. I was in Benin. When I saw the fireworks on television, I thought it was something else, but I don't know because initially I didn't know what the issues were. When I was told it's about change of seat, Sir, my seat has been changed. The only thing that the committee couldn't do is to change my person and my values. And thank God, as President Tinubu has said repeatedly, no matter how short a man is, he can see the sky. So my seat was changed, but my views have not changed about anything that I want to speak on. I think that is the beauty of democracy. This is meant to appeal to Senator Natasha, who you had caused as revealed by the leader of the House, that you even address her as princess of the Senate. I think she can still remain the princess that she has been, provided she doesn't work herself into the conclusion that it's a mark of weakness to admit when maybe out of whatever feeling you have erred. And it bears repeating that the offense is not against the presiding officer. It's breach of the rules under which affairs of this Senate are conducted. I'm not going to go to whether somebody has been favored or not favored. In life, what you do think is a favor, somebody else will see it as a favor. So I want to appeal to you, Mr. President. It's not an easy thing to sit there and issues of change of seat. That's what I want to comment on. Issues of change of seat degenerated to the kind of fireworks that we saw on television. And of course, for those who talk about social media, why are they social media? That is the way it works. So I conclude, sir. I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I apologize to the Senate leader that I'm speaking after he had spoken. But this is the time you had acknowledged me to speak. I think that the committee, if you follow the sequence, issues of discrimination cannot be proven. It is actually the opposite, that under your leadership, distinguished Senator Mrs. Uduaghan can claim victimization based on facts. And I urge her to reflect deeply about tomorrow, because she can do nothing about yesterday, but she can mend by recognizing that to apologize for what you have found to be wrong is not a mark of weakness. And to our colleagues, I think rebuilding our collective image is necessary. I had occasion to say that Once you have been stripped naked in the market, how much more can you cover, since everybody has seen it? But then I also then asked myself subsequently, because you were stripped naked in the market, should you continue to walk naked all over the country? The moment you realize you have been naked, we are told that when a madman realizes that she's naked, if you begin to wear clothes, then you know he's regaining sanity. It is not a mark of weakness. So I don't want to be on the side of peace. And I don't want all of us to be hawks. In this case, we need some doves to, tamper the general feeling in the Senate. I don't think there's any division. No one has questioned the facts as they are, and facts are stubborn. You can wrestle with the fact, you can wrestle with the truth, but you can't defeat the truth. And on that note, I want to thank you, sir, for this opportunity. And I believe my sister has held all those who have spoken. And I'm sure she knows she has a lot of friends among those who have spoken. And they cannot all be wrong. Thank you, Mr. President, for your patience, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you, sir.
Prayer 1.
Dear Senate President, may I be given a chance to speak?
Prayer 1. That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan for 6 months for a total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Nigerian Senate in general to a public opprobrium. Those in support of prayer 1 say aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. I put the question. Those in support of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. How do you amend a prayer that is unanimous? Prayer 2, that for the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or reducing the tenor of the suspension, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan shall submit a written apology to the Senate before any reconsideration by the Nigerian Senate. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. I don't think, Senator Abaribe, as a landlord of the Senate, I don't think they heard what I read. So let me just repeat for clarity. That for the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or reducing the tenor of the suspension, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan shall submit a written apology to the Senate before the reconsideration by the Senate. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. Okay, because I thought I had 50-50. Let me make it 40-60. That for the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or reducing the tenor of suspension, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan shall submit a written apology to the Senate before any reconsideration of this case by the Senate. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3.
Liberalism.
Prayer 3. That the Senate do suspend Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan with effect from 6th day of March 2025 from all legislative activities forthwith. Those in support of prayer 3 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4, that her office be locked up for the duration of this suspension, and she should hand over all Senate properties in her possession to the clerk of the National Assembly. Those in support of prayer 4 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 5, that for the duration of her suspension, she cannot come or be seen within the vicinity of the National Assembly, including her staff. But this is normal. Those in support of prayer 5 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Again, the ayes have it. Prayer 6, that our salaries and allowances, including those of our legislative aides, be suspended and withdrawal of all security details for the duration of our suspension. Yes, Senator Oju-Sakalo.
Aides have families. Most of them have come from villages, from towns to live in Abuja. It will be wrong to punish aides that have not committed any offense. Their aides will receive their allowances. No, but don't say. You have to agree with this. The aides of Natasha is not Natasha. It will be wrong for this Senate to deprive those aides not collecting their allowances. They are workers. They don't have any other farm to go to, Mr. President. Because these aides are workers of Senator Natasha. So I'm moving for amendment of that section that the aides will receive their allowances, Mr. President. I plead with you that these people might be having family in Abuja. They don't go to any farm. They don't have any other way of feeding. And I think that this Senate, my colleagues, you must allow the workers of Natasha to have their allowances. I so move, Mr. President.
Any second, the Senator Nedwoko, you have not spoken. Nedwoko has not spoken. Senator Nedwoko.
Thank you, Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Nedwoko. I represent the good people of Delta North, Delta State. Mr. President, I do stand to second the amendment as proposed by Senator Oji-Uzokalo. It's only fair that we allow the workers, even if they don't come to within the premises of the National Assembly, to receive their allowances. I so support.
Prayer 6 says that our salaries and allowances, including those of our legislative aides, be suspended. And the distinguished Senator Oju-Sakalo has proposed that the salaries and allowances of the aides be spared. Even if they don't, and like he said, he further amended it to say, even if they are not allowed to come within the vicinity of the National Assembly, because they are here only at our instance, but that their salaries should be spared. Those who are in support of the amendment, that the salaries of the aides be spared, say aye. Aye. And those who feel that their salaries should also be withheld by the Clerk of National Assembly, say nay. The ayes have it. For, that's a matter? Okay.
Distinguished colleagues, my name is Ahmed Lawan, I represent here North. Mr. President, the latter part of number 6 talks of withdrawal of all security details for the duration of our suspension. Mr. President, I want to believe that we still feel we are one, and any injury to any of us should be injury to all. I believe withdrawal of security aids
at this moment from a senator is not the best way to go. And we should not really create a precedence where the moment something happens with a member of the National Assembly, the security agencies will say withdraw the security aids. Because this could be a problem to us later. So I just want us to reflect on this. Thank you.
If your security is given to you as a leverage to your being a senator, then there will be no need for them to hang around with you when you are no longer a senator. In other words, if you are no longer a president of the Senate, you cannot continue to sit in the car of the president of the Senate. I was with you in the villa the day you declared support for me, and I saw you off as a sign of respect as the outgoing Senate president. When we got to the vehicle, you just pointed out and said, "This will be withdrawn from me tomorrow. I will come to your house." After you win. So if you are telling me that, assuming I had failed that day, would that vehicle come to my house?
Well, Mr. Senate President, I don't want it to be like I'm trying to make a case, but I believe that this is a suspended senator, not someone who ceases to be a senator. It's suspension.
But without arguing with you,
that's my case, yes.
Without arguing with you, let me remind you, you are a landlord in the Senate or in the National Assembly. Do you remember a senator that was called Oton Zeribe? A distinguished senator who was one of the richest people in southeastern Nigeria. And when he entered into the Senate, he carried along on his shoulders his wealth. May his soul rest in peace. When he was suspended, the Senate took steps to withdraw all his security. And when he refused to apologize to the Senate, he stayed out of the Senate for over 2.5 years until the end of that tenure. We are starting a journey now. And the journey depends on your attitude. Prayer 7, that for the period of her suspension, she be barred from representing herself to the public locally and internationally as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Those in support of prayer 7 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Let me thank my colleagues.
This injustice will not be sustained. The pursuit for justice.
She's not coming back.
Leader of the Senate.
Order on the paper be suspended and that this Senate adjourns till Tuesday.
I think I'm live. I'm moving. I think I'm live.
Mr. President.
4 plus 4. Oh, come on. 4 plus 4. 4 plus 4. 4 plus 4. Unshakable. Unshakable. You come now. You come in. Leader. I don't see your hand. Your hand. Let me not change. Congratulations. Congratulations.